Hey there, hobby friends. I'm Jared, and this is Caffeinated Miniatures. Thanks for hanging out with me today. So I have a confession to make. I've never really been interested in Warhammer 40K or that universe, meaning I've never painted anything from that realm. However, I was recently invited to play some Kill Team, and after looking at the kill teams for Kill Team, that sounds weird. I came across the Ork Kommandos. Now, I do like painting orcs, and painting space orcs with guns felt like it was right up my alley. Now, all of that to say, let's go ahead and paint up my first Warhammer 40K model, the Ork Snipa Boy. After slapping some Vallejo earth texture on the base and hosing it down with black primer, I was ready to paint. As I pretty well always do, I started with the skin. Mixing some Vallejo deep green and black, I created the deepest shadow color and covered the whole of the skin. Then I began mixing in some golden yellow to the deep green to start building up the volumes. With each additional layer, I added more golden yellow and covered maybe 80 to 90% of the previous layer. And particularly on the top of the head, I applied texture and dots with a brighter mix, adding a touch of ice yellow for the very brightest points. At this point, I decided this orky bastard was going to be 50 shades of green. Or more like 6, but you get the point. I figured by adding various colors to deep green, I could create fairly different colors that would still be quite cohesive on the model. The idea being that because deep green was the common base, I could paint visible differences between textures and items without them appearing disparate and chaotic. Moving on to the shirt, I went back to a dark mix of green, this time adding some flat earth from Vallejo to the deep green, creating a slightly warmer dark green. After covering the shirt with this mix, I started building the volumes and highlights by adding ivory to the mix, using sketchy, thin lines. This created a variation in hue, brightness, and texture to the shirt. For the pants, I began, once again, with deep green, this time mixing in medium flesh tone to create the deepest shadow color. Employing the same sketchy lines, I began building the volumes by increasing the amount of medium flesh tone in the mix. Somewhere along the process for these pants, I started adding random splotches or dots, vaguely improvising a bit of camo look. Did it work? To some degree. It wasn't something I'd tried before, and now I have some experience. Most importantly, it was kind of fun. I wanted the backpack and various pouches to be khaki-y, so I mixed some deep green into medium flesh tone for the shadow color. Then with more and more ivory in the mix, I sketched in some highlights. Then to add some more depth to the shadows, I diluted some brown ink and glazed it into the darker recesses, the darker areas. For any leather bits like the straps, belt, and boots, I went back to the dark green I started the skin with, the mix of deep green and black. This time I began adding in ice yellow to the mix. This colder dark green created a nice leathery appearance with the added benefit of blending into the background. By that I mean it didn't take away from the center point of the model, the head and face. With the bulk of the model painted, I moved on to the big ol' rifle. I wanted some silvery and some yellowy metal on the rifle, and I just don't have any metallic paint that I actually enjoy using. It just doesn't really behave the way I expect acrylic paint to act, which just makes for a not particularly enjoyable experience. As such, a few more NMM, some non-metallic metal reps, were necessary. To create the silver metal, I just mixed cold white and black, going back and forth between light and dark until I was relatively happy with the result. For the more yellow metal, I began with a mix of cavalry brown and medium flesh tone. Then medium flesh tone, then mixing in ice yellow. Again, throughout this process, I find that I move back and forth between highlight and mid-tone until I'm relatively happy with the result. In the end, I felt it was far too yellow, so I diluted some brown ink and used it as a filter to kind of tone down the yellow a bit. In hindsight, orange or red ink may have been a better choice, but live and learn, I guess. After finishing up a few of the remaining details, I moved on to the base. I started with some pretty heavily diluted mahogany brown, slopping it all over the base. And before it was dry, I went back in with some also heavily diluted medium flesh tone. This naturally left some random areas of differing tones. After that was all dry, I grabbed a dry brush and brushed on a mix of medium flesh tone and ivory. Then just add a few tufts. Throw some black around the base rim, and we've got a completed model. Well, there you have it, my first Warhammer 40K model. I really like these Ork Commando models, they're just a whole lot of fun to paint. That being said, I'm not exactly sold on Kill Team. It's kind of weird, I mean, why not just use a measuring tape? Basically, it's just not as good as Warcry. Sorry, not sorry. And I am absolutely not sold on Warhammer 40K. I mean, never say never, but I've definitely got some Age of Sigmar to work on first. What did you think of my Snipa Boy? Are you a fan of Kill Team? Let me know in the comments below. As always, if you made it this far, you are an absolute legend. If you liked the video, hit that like button and maybe subscribe. You owe it to yourself. And thanks for watching. You are awesome. And I'll see you in the next one.